What's the first thing you had to figure out when it came to keeping your game sharp post college?
First thing's just time, priorities, things like that. What are you going to do when it comes to your practice? What are you going to do to, prioritizing playing on the weekends? So when I first graduated, it was, like I said, COVID. And I actually, ironically, still had an in-office job, but it was because of the thing that I was working on at Fifth Third could really only be taught in person. It would be like today, you could probably do it with everyone being used to working on
Mhm.
WebEx or Teams and things like that. But it was a new thing, right? At Fifth Third, I loved working there, but it was kind of, hey, this is a 5 day a week in the office job. You can work remote in special circumstances. Um, but I still went in, it kind of sucked, to be honest, because it was like an 8 to 5, and everyone says 9 to 5, and it's really funny because I have a very different experience. Like I've always worked in 8 to 5. It's like you're there from 8 to 5. You're taking, you might take an hour lunch, you might not, you might work through it. You get off at 5 o'clock on Fridays, and it was either I'm going to Indianapolis to visit my girlfriend. She was living in Indianapolis, or I'm gonna go home and hang out with friends, and then if I'm staying on the weekend, I'm probably gonna play Saturday morning and maybe play Sunday if I can make it happen too. So it was really that. But to be honest, like I didn't really play competitive golf for probably a year, and not by choice, just by circumstances, I would say. I played like some local stuff, some USGA qualifiers, things like that, but I never so in the fall I played in a qualifier. I qualified for US four ball in the spring. So that was my first, like, well shoot, now I gotta go block off a week of my 3 weeks of vacation I get to go out to Chambers Bay and play in the four ball. Which, like, so that's like that was probably the biggest thing too, of like, well, there goes a week of my entire year on vacation because at my that job at the time, it wasn't one of these situations I have now where it's a little bit more flexible.
So we talked kind of time management in general, right? Specifically, what does that look like on now let's say you're going from 3 hours down to maybe you got an hour to practice. What was the first thing that got cut?
Putting, ironically. I've always been a good putter, thankfully, knock on wood. Um, if I, like I said, if I hit it, if I'm hitting it well, I'll go do a putting drill for a little bit. But honestly, I've always felt comfortable over a putter, and I've never had the Y word. I've never had, visually like what is happening in front of me, and I truly contributed over all these years. I just think I have a knack for reading greens, right? Because a lot of people are like, you got to marry the line and the speed, and I believe in that, but I'd more believe in the fact that you need to pick how hard you're going to hit a putt first before you pick your line. And that might not be a lot of way people think, but as Hayden could tell you, like I'm hitting it 2 feet by the hole almost on every single putt, unless it's one of those touchy downhill sliders that you really can't let get away from you. But I'm not afraid of a 2, 3, 4 footer coming back up the hill or down the hill, whatever it may be, versus leaving the putt short. So that was the first to go. Hitting drivers was probably the second thing to go. Like I would hit if I had 4 good drivers in a row in a practice, it's like we're good. I'm not really about it. I've always been a good driver of the golf ball. I've always hit it relatively straight. I've never been the longest hitter, but as technology's gotten better, as I don't care as much, and we can get into that if you want to. Like I actually hit it farther than I did in college, and so that's been something that I don't really focus on as much, and it really just focused to let's become the best wedge player that I can be, because even in the mid am game or even in the am game, you know, like you're still going to have probably 6 wedges around, even at, I've played in the USAM and you're still having 6 wedges, right? You just got to pick those spots. And then from there, I've always been an okay mid iron player. Um, I actually switched to blades in my 7, 8, 9 iron after I graduated college. So I view it as like an extension of wedges. I just, for some reason, it's a lot easier for me to get comfortable hitting an 8 iron from 170 yards and making sure that, the goal is to hit this to 10 feet, right? You might not always do it, but if I have a sand wedge in my hand from 105 yards, my goal is to hit it inside 10 feet almost every single time. Now, obviously, that doesn't happen, but I've always felt comfortable there. But then it was more 4, 5, and 6 iron. I've never been a good long iron player. I'll never really claim to be one, but I just need to get better at it. So that's what I've been working on, or that's what I started to work on more out of college.